See, so far we have seen how to provision resources on AWS Cloud using Terraform resource blocks. For example, if you go to my GitLab repository, if you go to VPC Subnet EC2, if you look at the main.tf file, we have all the resources declared like this. Any resource that you want to create, you declare it like this, and then you keep that .tf file. And then what is the command that you need to run in order to create resources? What is the command you need to run to create resources in AWS Cloud? What is the set of sequence of commands, at least? Someone quickly tell me what the commands are. Terraform, init,
Terraform plan, apply, and
yeah,
finally destination.
correct. So we need to follow the Terraform workflow to create the resources in AWS Cloud. What is the authentication method we'll be using for Terraform? Is my
The access key and secret key. Sir.
screen secret? Is my screen visible? Where is the access key and secret key? In your home directory .aws credentials file. Correct? Any doubts on this process with respect to creating resources in AWS Cloud from your Git bash? Git bash is your interface for you to create resources in AWS Cloud. Correct? You write your Terraform code, you check out the code, you clone the repository or you copy the repository from remote to here. From here, what you do is you just do a /deploy.sh, which is nothing but Terraform init, Terraform validate, plan, and apply. These are the sequence of commands, or this is a workflow for Terraform. So anybody has any doubts with respect to the basic workflow, which you do it from your Git bash? Quick answer, please. Okay, I'll put the question this way. If you want to run your workflow in GitLab from GitLab, what is the thing required? Say you are running everything from Git bash, right? /deploy.sh. What are you supposed to do if you want to run this from GitLab? Any clue from anyone?
Access key and secret key.
Access key and secret key should be created where? In your
Terraform.
no, in your GitLab repository, in your configuration. I mean, in your settings. See, you are supposed to go to your settings. Yeah, you are supposed to go to your groups. Go to your DevOps group. Go to settings. Go to CI/CD. Go to variables and create variables like AWS underscore access key ID, copy paste access key ID over here, and then copy your access key from your credentials file and click on add variables. So that is the way you create an access key. And then what you need to do is you need to create the next one is secret key, secret access key. Copy paste your AWS access secret access key description here, and then copy your secret key from here. Do a control C, do a control V here, and then say add variable. Similarly, you need to create AWS default region as well in your GitLab variable section. Especially, you have to go to your DevOps group, and then I'll show you the flow once again. Going back to groups, going to DevOps group. From here, you need to go to your settings, go to CI/CD, go to variables, go to add variables, and then start adding all your variables. After that, what you need to do is you need to verify your account. If you have not verified your account so far, you need to verify your account. This is the first step for you to enable pipeline. What do you mean by pipeline? Any guesses from anyone? Okay, I'll go through the slide. Then you will have some questions. Okay, I'll go from the start. So where are we currently? We are almost done with all first three part, and we are currently in the GitLab, where we are able to create the resources required. Create the remote repository. We are able to push repository from local. We are able to clone the repository. Now we are just configuring the CI/CD in GitLab. Any questions on this? Okay, so what are we doing here? So far we are creating Terraform configuration file, which is nothing but HCL format. You as a DevOps engineer, you create all this and then do a Terraform workflow that is Terraform init, validate, plan, and apply. What it does is based on the provider configuration and the provisioner configuration, it creates resources in AWS cloud. Since we are primarily relying or using AWS cloud, it uses your Terraform, which is there in your machine. That's a Terraform software. Using that, it creates resources in AWS cloud. Ultimately, after that, it updates your Terraform state file, which is your current state of your AWS cloud resources. So anybody has any questions on this particular slide? Shreyas, Abhi, Anjana.
What is the difference between remote exec and local exec?
Remote exec is all about executing something on your EC2 machine.
Okay.
Something on EC2 machine. Local exec is on your git bash. Your git bash.
Okay, sir.
See, it's like you copy your private key, that is local exec. Create your private key and then copy it to your local machine, that is local exec. You log
Yes.
into remote machine. From remote machine, if you want to run something, you have to use remote exec module. Okay. Any other questions? Anyone? What is the Terraform state file? Anybody got a chance to look at the Terraform state file?
TF state, .tf state.
Correct. What is the TF state file? What does it contain? It contains information about your cloud resources which are already created by Terraform. The current state of the infrastructure. Okay. Now, instead of you running everything from Git bash, you are going to run it from GitLab. So I'll just put GitLab as your interface, GL. So if you want to run from GitLab, what is the first thing that you need to do? You already, I just explained it. What is the thing that you need to do? You have to provide, create group variables like access key and secret key. Correct? Is it correct or not?
Yes, sir.
Be interactive in the class so that you understand whatever I'm teaching. I'm putting a lot of effort to explain you all the basic things and explaining in the right flow. So you need access key and secret key to be put it on the GitLab. Okay, what is the next thing that you need to do? What is required for you? You need a Git bash. So you need an interface to run your pipeline jobs. Pipeline jobs means your Terraform workflow. I'll say IF interface. Okay, this interface is nothing but your GitLab runner. GLR. I'll say it is your interface to run your Terraform code on AWS Cloud, sorry, on GitLab and to create AWS Cloud resources. So what is GLR? What is GLR? GitLab?
GitLab repository.
GitLab runner. GLR is nothing but your GitLab runner, which will be a Docker container. So we have not seen Docker container yet, but ultimately it is just a small operating system running on top of a virtual machine. Okay. So this GitLab runner will use Docker and then it will run your Terraform code like Terraform init, Terraform plan, validate and apply. So this is what is all about GitLab pipeline, GitLab CI. Any questions on this? I'll ask one question. You need to answer it. So where will this Terraform state file go? What is this Terraform state file? Where does it go when you run from GitLab? You guys are there in the call. Anybody guess? Or the old students like Badami, Mahesh can respond to this, can give me an answer. Where does the Terraform state file will go if you are running it from GitLab CI, running from GitLab? Any clue, any understanding so far? Badami, speak out. Tarun? Mahesh?
AWS, sir. I think AWS.
Yeah, correct. AWS is correct. But which resource? S3. S3 is the object storage. There we will be storing the Terraform state file. So it is called a remote state file. Since you are not using a local machine, say for CI, no local machine. Say local machine or git bash is not used. Correct? In that case, you are supposed to use GitLab runner in GitLab. So ultimately, your GitLab runner will be the interface for you to run your Terraform workflow. That is ultimately using Docker container in which it will be executed. Okay, moving on to the next slide. So this workflow is common irrespective of whether you run it from local machine or remote machine. So you remember all the resources, right? What is a provider block? What is a resource block? What is a data source? What is variables? What is output? So data source, maybe you are not aware very clearly. Data source is all about getting the data from AWS cloud. For example, if you want to get the subnet ID of existing subnet or VPC of the existing VPC, you can use data source block. So I'll show you an example here. If you go to main.tf and in your docker-tf-ec2, not the vpc-docker, docker-tf-ec2, you will see a data block which is saying AWS underscore VPC, my underscore VPC, default equals true. So what would happen is this data block would go and look for the default VPC. So default equals true, there will be a default equals true tag which is set in your VPC. That also I'll show you quickly. If I log into my AWS account, if I go to my VPC, I'll see one default equals true tag. You guys go to VPC. This VPC ID, how you get it from your data block is you have to mention the default equals true. See, if you go to this VPC, say I'm searching for default. So default VPC, yes, right? Normally, if you create a VPC for your purpose, this default VPC will become no. VPC is yes. So default VPC becomes true. So with this key, you can get the VPC ID. So here data.aws underscore VPC dot my VPC dot ID, you get the default VPC ID, which you have to get it directly from AWS console. The same thing you can get it from there. This VPC ID, this VPC ID, instead of going to console and copying that, you can get it like this. Data.aws underscore VPC dot VPC ID. For that, you need to define the data block before. From the filter, you can get it. And you're supposed to filter with the availability zone also, because you're not going to get any you're not going to get from any availability zone, you're going to get it from the availability zone 1A, because we'll be using 1A, which is available for all the default VPCs, and I don't want anybody to use other subnets. See, if you go to subnet also, you will see whether it is in the AZ1A, 1.2, 1B. So it will be distributed across 6 or 7. So I am, in general, I am using US East 1A. So this goes to this default subnet. You can see that what is the IPv4 CIDR, what is the availability zone. So everything you can see from here. Okay. Moving on to the data block, sorry, variable block. Variable block is all about how you define a variable like this. It is something similar to what you define in Python, like variable name and a variable value. These modules and locals, little advanced. You guys don't need to learn it. I'll definitely give you a high level introduction. Modules is all about, instead of you writing everything, you can use one module to pick up all the code, and then you just need to introduce only variables. So how many of you remember how to create a provider block? It is simply a provider, AWS, and region, whatever region that you want to use. So this I have already explained you how to call your variables declared, how to create a resource, resource name, and your tag or your name, whatever you want to give, and then required parameters inside. What is required for creating an EC2 instance? What is required to create an EC2 instance? Is there anyone on the call?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, what is required to create an EC2 instance?
YAMI ID with OS and CPU details and key pairs, security
Correct.
groups.
Correct. And what else? Subnet ID. So if I go to here, you will see the main Amazon.tf, so that you have a understanding of what exactly is required. So you need to provide all the information so that the resources gets created. Say ubuntu.tf. You can see that instance type is required, AMI ID is required, key name is required, subnet ID is required, security group is required. So all of these information are required. And your root block device, I mean your EBS volume. If you don't provide it, by default it takes 8 GB of EBS volume. User data, any idea what is user data? It is basically a startup script for your instance to install or create resources. You might have seen it in the AWS classes, like how to use user data for installing some packages, configuration of some resources. I'll show you the user data for now so that you understand where it is, what it is. If I go to data and I have Amazon underscore MQ and Ubuntu underscore MQ for each. So I have the commands yum update. DNF update is nothing but yum update. You have a DNF install of all the packages required, Docker, HTTPD, Python 3-pip. All of these packages will be installed while you are provisioning the resources. Then it also installs a Flask application, Flask package, and then it goes to your Flask app, and then it runs this particular application. It creates a app.python script, which is app.py, which is nothing but a simple hello world program. Hello DevOps stream. My application code is in EC2. That is what is a print message return statement. And then you are running the Python application. And then you are also starting the Docker container, sorry, Docker engine, and you are also changing the property of the Docker user. So EC2 user. Permission you are changing to run as EC2 user. So your Docker command will be executed only when you run this for EC2 user. So all of those commands will get executed on your EC2 instance which you are creating. Okay, I'm moving on to the Terraform. So what is continuous integration? Continuously picking up the code changes which a developer does or which a DevOps engineer does for Terraform code and create resources as soon as the code is modified. Okay. See, here you normally create code and commit the code to a repository, but you run it manually to create resources in cloud. To create resources in cloud, you run it manually. The /deploy.sh or Terraform init plan, apply, and destroy. But in case of CI/CD, what you are supposed to do is you are supposed to do git push. Git push your code, and it should automatically trigger your job. So trigger is something based on your push or merge. Push or merge. Your code will be picked up automatically and it will run the CI/CD pipeline in order to create resources in AWS cloud. It is an automated way of running. So what is DevOps? DevOps is all about automation, right? So all the code will be picked up automatically and then it will trigger the pipeline. Pipeline will have information about what are the stages that it needs to execute. What are the stages? That's like Terraform init, validate, plan, and apply. That it will execute in a sequence manner and then it will create resources in AWS cloud. Apart from that, you need to also make sure different environments are created like test, staging, production, dev, all this environments created for you in order to in order for the application team to deploy resources in your environments. Any questions on this? So here you can see that S3 cache. Here is where we store our Terraform state file. Okay. You as a DevOps engineer, you write code. Sorry. And you push your code here to your GitLab repository. GL. After that, what happens is this code will go to the GitLab runner and it will execute your Terraform init, validate, plan, and apply commands. Here, this is all about application deployment. Here we are talking about infra, Terraform or infra creation, Terraform code or infra creation. For infra creation, what is the workflow? It has Terraform init, Terraform validate, Terraform plan, and Terraform apply. After that, what it does is it creates a required AWS resources in AWS Cloud. So the medium that it uses is GitLab Runner, in which your code will be executed. You will not be using any of your local resources like Git Bash or your AWS credentials. So here it stores your Terraform state file in S3 bucket. So here is a exact workflow, GitLab CI/CD. You commit your code to GitLab. It will automatically provision the resources in AWS Cloud. It will be running it on the GitLab runner. So I'll say GR. It will be running it on the GitLab runner. Here you can see that your state file is stored in S3 bucket. Terraform creates your resources in AWS Cloud. You commit your changes to GitLab. It provisions resources using Terraform, which is there in the Docker file, which is there in the Docker GitLab runner. So these things do not come into picture because we are not using these resources. We are just using only GitLab for CI/CD. So we'll be also using DynamoDB log table. That is to say, for example, one person is running and creating resources in AWS Cloud, and it should be logged because it is actually creating resources in AWS Cloud right now. So the other person should not be running it at the same time so that it'll conflict. So for that, we need to create a lock that will be created by DynamoDB table. So this will create a table. This will create a lock and put in a particular DynamoDB table. So as long as the table is locked, other person will not be able to run the pipeline. So these two things are important. One is S3 bucket and another one is DynamoDB table. These two will be provisioning it before running the pipeline. Okay, one important thing with respect to your pipeline is you need to have a .gitlab ci.yaml file that you're supposed to do it like this. So if you look at this, you will have the variables that you're calling from your GitLab group variables. Whatever that you defined, you're calling AWS access key ID, secret access key, bucket name. Bucket name we are directly providing here. Default region also we are providing. You can also use AWS underscore $AWS underscore default underscore region. So you have to define the variables first, and then you have to define the stages for your pipeline. It is exactly same as your deploy.sh file. See, whatever stages that you defined here in the deploy.sh, the same thing you will be defining it here: validate, plan, apply, and destroy. Only destroy will be manual step in order to run. So you will see when it will be executed, it is only when you manually click on the particular button, it will be executed. Otherwise, it will not get executed. Here, this setup.
Sir, I have one doubt here, sir.
Sure.
In variable sections, we are
Yeah.
picking AWS access key and secret key, right? It is picking from GitLab or from
GitLab.
GitLab. Okay.
So before you write your .gitlab CI YAML file, you are supposed to create the resource, create the variables in your GitLab group, so that it, while you are running it, it can pick up these changes.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Sure. So these different stages you need to define, and you have to define the jobs as well. See, if you look at it, there is a job name, which is nothing but plan, and the stage is called plan. So we are trying to use the same keyword for both stage as well as job. If you look at the Terraform pipeline, you will see jobs like validate, plan, apply, and destroy. The init is part of your before script. Before script is all about before every stage, it will run the script. It will go to this particular, this one, Docker. This Docker container gets created while you are running this pipeline. And in the Docker container, it installs the AWS CLI. It goes to the particular directory and then run Terraform in it. After that only your Terraform validate will run for that particular job, and then Terraform plan will run, and then Terraform apply will run. I'll quickly show you the pipeline as well. I have to go to the groups to show you the pipeline. So I have this, wherever I have a CI, that means it's a pipeline, CI pipeline, which is running. So you will see that I have the .gitlab CI YAML file, and it talks about running different jobs like this. I'll have to go to build and pipelines. You have to go to a particular project and go to build and then click on pipelines if you want to see your pipeline is running or not. So if I go to a particular job ID, I can see what are the different stages it got executed. Like this: validate, plan, apply, and destroy. It is all based on your stages that you defined in your code block. Sorry, in your GitLab CI YAML file. If you probably add a new stage, this new stage will come into your jobs. Okay. So what you can do is, the first thing is you have to create your group variables. After that, you just need to follow the instructions that I provide in the chat, that you can do it, and then configure your CI/CD pipeline and ensure you are able to execute the pipeline. There are a couple of other things that are required. Is you have to validate your account, verify your account, then only your pipeline will run. Okay, any questions so far? Any questions from anyone? Okay, I'll stop the recording.